The character of Goten has been a subject of Dragon Ball conversation over the course of many years, and while the story never gave him the attention that the other hybrid Saiyans got like Gohan and Trunks, there is no doubt that Goten possessed incredible potential. But the question is, how much potential did Goten really have, and if things were different, would his realized potential have surpassed Gohan or Trunks? Well, to answer that question, alrighty guys, it is Qaaman here today. And let's break down this theoretical discussion. So to start us off, there really is only one major feat that Goten has in Dragon Ball that truly sets him apart from his hybrid counterparts. And this is the mere fact that at just 7 years old, he already knew how to turn into a Super Saiyan while not even being able to fly. From a narrative perspective, this was obviously done because the story needs to speed up Goten and Trunks' abilities to compete against stronger characters. Just like in Dragon Ball Super where Kale, Caulifla, and Cabba all attained Super Saiyan relatively quickly. Cabba may have needed a greater catalyst in order to become a Super Saiyan, but he still learned it relatively fast compared to other characters throughout Dragon Ball history. But Goten turning Super Saiyan early isn't necessarily why this is impressive. It's the mere fact that Goten achieved this transformation in a peaceful world with Chi-Chi as the main person training him. But Trunks knew how to fly and Goten didn't, showing that there were major holes in Goten's fighting abilities despite being almost as strong as Trunks. But here's where Vegeta comes in. You see, Goten spent his short life training with Chi-Chi and briefly with Gohan, whereas it was pretty clear from both the anime and manga that Trunks always trained intensely with Vegeta and was a more developed fighter. Because how on earth did Trunks learn how to fly on his own? Obviously Vegeta must have taught him at some point, because who else would? And if Trunks somehow taught himself to fly, he had the advantage of observing Vegeta do it to learn on his own. But let's not overlook that Trunks has another advantage over Goten, and this is the mere fact that his mother and grandfather are super geniuses, and because of this, he is able to accelerate his training by using a gravity chamber or any other device that could push him farther. Compare this to Goten, who is just freely training in the mountains with his mother with no technology to further increase his gains. So we can clearly see that Goten, having a dead father, studious brother, and a mother who's very strong for normal humans, but obviously not abnormally powerful, had a major handicap in development as compared to Trunks. And if we use a basic training formula where the weaker character always gains more from the stronger character, it just further illustrates the potential that Goten has when you compare him to present Trunks. In fact, using Future Trunks and Future Gohan further illustrates this basic training formula. Future Gohan is still the same Gohan with all the potential in the world, but with limited resources to improve himself. So in the future timeline, it was Trunks that had the greater potential than Gohan, based on the fact that he was younger, and also based on the fact that Trunks was weaker than Gohan, so he had a lot more to gain from Gohan than Gohan had to gain from Trunks. And that's why we see this when looking at Goku training with Gohan in the Room of Spirit and Time. Both of them had massive gains in power and ability, but Gohan went from being a kid who couldn't even turn Super Saiyan to being possibly slightly stronger than Goku in his full power Super Saiyan state, and leaps above him in Super Saiyan 2. However, there is a clear difference between Gohan and Goten when compared to Trunks and Goten, and this is where our conversation takes a major turn. You see, Goten never really displayed any type of hidden potential when compared to Gohan. He more or less was just really strong really early, but never had any moments that resembled what Gohan did numerous times as a kid. No raging out against Raditz to save Goku, no raging out against Nappa to avenge Piccolo dying, and no raging out against Frieza to save Krillin's life. And while there was a moment in the movie Bio Broly that hinted at Goten's hidden potential, this was a brief moment in a movie and can't be used as evidence for the argument that we're trying to make. And another argument that goes against Goten is the fact that he did have the benefit of being able to occasionally spar with Trunks even if he wasn't able to fly. Trunks is far above Chi-Chi in terms of power, but he's also still a kid, so he can't really teach Goten how to bring out his latent abilities if he even had them. So Goten occasionally sparring with Trunks is a huge advantage over what Gohan had at a very young age, Because when Gohan was a kid, there was no one in his life that was anywhere near as strong as Kid Trunks for him to grow that fast. And when we look at the future timeline, Goku and Piccolo were both dead, so neither of them would have been alive to help Gohan reach his full potential. And when we look at the end of Dragon Ball Z, and specifically we're talking about the end of Dragon Ball Z before Super retconned its existence into the time gap, evidence shows that Goten's full potential was never as great as Gohan's, even more. First of all, Goten cared a lot more about dating than training, so his internal motivation was never there to be that strong anyways. And remember, this is the original End of Z storyline where there was nothing but peace for many years. So there's no Dragon Ball Super to give an excuse for Goten not being as strong, since you can use the argument that Goku would have been too busy fighting others and training himself in Dragon Ball Super. But in the original End of Z storyline, Goku was doing nothing. He was free and there was a world of peace, so Goten had all the time in the world to get as strong as he could. And last but not least, if Goten's potential was really that great, wouldn't Goku have cared more to train his own son than Oob? Especially with no Beerus, no angels, and no immediate threats to Earth? Goku clearly saw something in Oob that he didn't see in his own son, and knew his son never cared as much for fighting, so he decided to force a poor kid from a village to essentially dedicate his whole life to fighting after forcing him to exist in the first place. And while you can say that's quite selfish when you look at that in hindsight, at this point Goku clearly saw more in Oob than Gohan and Goten and even his own granddaughter Pan that motivated him to train Oob over his own family. And whether or not you consider it canon, GT just further confirms this, as Goten was clearly one of the strongest fighters on Earth, obviously, but compared to Trunks, Gohan, Vegeta, and Goku, he was just sort of there. And he never, and I mean never at any moment, had a point where his power jumped incredibly against a stronger foe. And Baby himself showed this when he stole Goten's body and was eager to upgrade to Gohan's body and eventually Vegeta's. On a side note, one reason why it's so difficult to assess Goten's potential is because he has no individuality. Goten is and was always synonymous with Trunks and the Gotenks fusion, and because of this, his individual potential is difficult to realize because most of the time his abilities are simply a component of the Gotenks fusion. And to make matters worse, Gotenks' juvenile personality is completely derived from Trunks, and the childlike creativity of Gotenks is also directly from Trunks, as Goten grew up in the middle of nowhere and never had the social exposure that Trunks did to behave like Gotenks in the first place. So basically, Gotenks is really just Kid Trunks with a major power boost, and because of this, it's hard to credit Goten for anything since most of the fighting was done as a team. This doesn't even include Dragon Ball Super, where Gotenks himself is irrelevant, leaving Goten behind as just an ingredient for fusion. And let's be honest guys, it certainly doesn't help Goten's case that he looks identical to Goku while already having no individual accolades to his name. His appearance alone, especially as a child, makes it so easy to classify him as a typical Goku clone, while Gohan, having a more original look and character depth, seems more fitting to just have more potential anyways. Now, recent Dragon Ball revelations have provided the whole S-cell argument, where a character like Goten inherited a lot of S-cells similar to Anakin having the midichlorians in the Star Wars prequels. And as Toriyama said, a gentle spirit makes it easier to become a Super Saiyan, and if we follow this recent change in how Saiyan anatomy works, then it actually weakens the argument for Goten's full potential, since his potential is based off of genetics, while having little to no hidden potential the way that Gohan did that was specific to him. In life, especially in sports, we often encounter situations where people may improve quickly in the beginning, but as time passes their growth remains stagnant while their contemporaries keep on improving. And this is similar to the case that we are talking about with Goten and Gohan. As for Trunks, Future Trunks actually had a moment against Zamasu where he unleashed a crazy transformation out of nowhere like Gohan did against Cell, showing that while present Trunks may have had more inherent advantages that Goten did, it's possible that long-term, Trunks too has a greater all-around potential than Goten. So if we were to put Goten in the same situations as Gohan and Future Trunks, there is no evidence that he would have had the hidden potential to bail out of bad situations. So ultimately, one example that perfectly illustrates Goten's potential would be to look at Caulifla and Kale. Caulifla might learn things incredibly fast and may be a naturally gifted fighter, but there is no question that long term, if Kale were properly trained, she would easily surpass Caulifla in all areas due to the hidden abilities that go far beyond what one person can simply learn or train themselves to do. So if you enjoyed this video and you like talking about Saiyan anatomy, check out the Saiyan nature versus Saiyan nurture theory. In addition to that, you would also like anime Caulifla versus manga Caulifla, or what if Goku trained Kale and Caulifla in Universe 6. And until next time, stay cool and stay safe, my friends.